speaking of, here's another thing I can show. So years ago, on Memorial Day weekend, I would go to Cherry Capital Comic Con, which is in Traverse City. And so this is me circa 2014 at Cherry Capital Comic Con, which I believe was my first Cherry Capital Comic Con. So you see like a lot of just black and white stuff. I was still kind of learning things. I'd only been doing comics for like barely 2 years, I think, at that point. But, you got to start somewhere. And this was me, like, getting stuff printed off at like FedEx Kinko's or whatever, and doing it myself and all that sort of thing. And but yeah, that was my regular Memorial Day weekend plans for several years. And basically, I think 2018, 2019 was probably my last one I did. And that would have been 2019, because 2018 was my first year. 2018 was my first year doing the East Lansing Art Festival, and I had already planned doing Cherry Capital Comic Con in Traverse City. And then the next year, 2019, I did it again, but by that point I had been doing enough art festivals where I was kind of realizing comic cons weren't really my best place for my audience, I guess the best way to put that. Nothing against comic cons. I love going to them. I am interested in possibly trying to show at one at some point ever again. But just like I was making 10 times as much at art festivals. It wasn't even close, so yeah. But like I said, you just, you gotta start somewhere. And I started by doing comic cons, and back when I was doing more comic stuff, which I haven't really for the last few years, just because I just had way more success with the fine art stuff, as it's called. And like it wasn't even close. Like to like make anywhere near the money at Comic Cons that I'm making at art festivals, I would either have to like go all in on fan art and just sell, prints of fan art stuff, which I don't want to do. And I made the choice several years ago to not worry about that, and I don't regret it. Or you have to have like, books, and, I've done that, and, selling comic books and is great and all, but that's, years of work to make something, and then you gotta get, printed up. Either you go through someone else to publish it, which would be great, that would be ideal, or if you're self-publishing it, then you gotta do all that stuff yourself, which is another big headache and process. And whereas I can make original art and sell at art festivals, and it's a fraction of the time compared to like compiling and doing all the work for a comic book or a collection of comics or something. And yeah, and making prints of my original art too is, again, a lot easier. So like to compare, to do some simple math. So like when I had a comic collection I did a few years ago, that was, 100 pages. And that was basically, that was a page a week I was doing, essentially. it wasn't 100 comic pages per se, but let's just say it was for the simplicity of it. So that was, over almost 2 years, a little under 2 years of work just getting all those pages. I mean, obviously, if I didn't have a book plan to start with, so I was just doing a page every week to begin with, and eventually got to the point where I could do a book. The flip side of that is if you're planning to do a book, then if that's what you're working on, then I could have done that number of pages obviously a lot faster. But just to, as it was, that was over a year, almost 2 years of work just getting the 100 pages of comics, and then I had to do the cover, do all the book layout, get them printed, and they cost me about I don't know, $8 to $10 a copy, I think. And then I would sell them for 20. So I'm making, $12 to $10 a book, which isn't bad. This is a full color book too. So, if you're doing like smaller black and white stuff, it'd be way cheaper to produce and easier and all that sort of thing. But, to compare to this season where I made my, I had my 12 by 12 prints I did of my 24 by 24 originals. I had my 11 by 14 prints I did. It didn't take me a year to make all those original pieces. And I mean, probably combined total days, it was over a course of a long period of time, but, and then I just took those that dropped off to get scanned and then made in the prints, and then I can get those remade. And the costs are about, they're not too far off from this, maybe a little less than, it depends. There's a lot of factors, but it's still more cost effective because then, I sell them for $40 and they're limited edition. So, that's the trade-off, is I only have 100 of these, whereas like with the book, I could have thousands of copies of it, but there's trade-offs for everything. And then so I guess to get to the point, like if you want to make it at Comic Cons, like if you want to sell your comics, you can absolutely do that, but it's a lot of work to get all that stuff. And I just had better success in the first couple years I did art festivals than I did in the several years I was doing Comic Cons. So it was an easy decision for me. I still love making comics, and I still want to do more with comics and all that. And thankfully, at least with my cartooning stuff, I'm still kind of using those skills. But, it's, as the saying goes, comics can break your heart, and that is absolutely true. Because it's something you can really love doing, and it can be very frustrating to try and have any success with it. But a lot of that, again, is just, you got to find your audience and all that.